Hello and welcome to Books to Last, the podcast that challenges readers to pick the only 5 books they may take with them to a mystery remote location of their choosing. Happiest of New Year's. I hope you've had a wonderful and restorative festive season and a great start to 2025. For this first episode of the year, as in previous years, I'm not joined by a book-loving guest, but I am here to share my Books to Last for the year just past. That wasn't meant to rhyme, but there you go. I had a pretty good reading year last year, not all round brilliant, but still pretty good. I had a very hectic and life-filled February to July, so I essentially took about half of the year off reading and pretty much almost everything else. So I didn't read as much as I had planned to, but that's okay because I have a whole other bunch of stuff to show for it, and reading's a hobby. I do wish I could have read more just because I think it probably would have been better for me personally. But it is what it is, and I'm still happy that I got some really good books in. Diving straight into my top 5 books for last year, the first one up is The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray. This is a series set after the Austen books, but in the world of the Austen characters. So it amalgamates all of the books that Austen wrote into one world and one timeline. And this is set after them, but in the form of cozy murder mysteries. It combines all of the charm and wit and character of Austen's world with twists and mystery and cleverness of classic Agatha Christie style mysteries. I adore both of those things, so I, of course, adored this series. I had barely even finished the first one, which is this one, The Murder of Mr. Wickham, before I had got onto the phone to my local bookstore, Drop City Books, and got them to get the next 2 in for me, because I just knew I needed to read all of them immediately. I devoured all of them in very short succession. I'm only recommending the first one here because I'm not allowed to do the whole series, but I think once anyone reads this one, they will have to read the subsequent ones. This is the closest I've felt to Austen's writing in any contemporary book that claims to be set in her world. I adore the main 2 characters, who are Mr. Jonathan Darcy, the son of Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. He is an explicitly autistic character, which I love because it's written so well and is presented really, really empathetically, but also genuinely. And as a autistic person myself, I found it just amusing because I understood so much of what was going on, but also just really good to read such a interesting depiction of how neurodivergence might have been taken and appeared in Regency era England. Jonathan Darcy pairs up with Miss Juliet Tilney, who is the daughter of Henry and Catherine from Northanger Abbey, and I really like Juliet. She's a lot of fun. The series is called the Mr. Darcy and Miss Tilney Mysteries. It wasn't what I expected it to be, but it was so much better and so much more, and I really love it. I can't wait for the 4th book to come out, I think, this summer. The second book I have picked for my top 5 for 2024 is Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. This is Newport's newest book. I love all of his work that I've read. He's a really interesting thought leader and academic in the area of productivity and time management, but not in the way that so many are in that area, where they're just talking about how you can possibly get more and more done in less and less time, and it's all about hustle and grind. This is his newest and probably his most groundbreaking book in terms of a new philosophy on creating meaningful work and a fulfilling life. It pioneers things like working at a natural pace and prioritizing quality over quantity. It gives a lot of really interesting vignettes and case studies of creatives throughout history who have actually taken a slower, not a faster approach to work, and how that actually allowed them to create more in some cases, but also allowed them to stand the test of time and create better, and how it really benefited their process and how you could apply it to your own process and work. And I found it really nice to read and a nice change of pace because I love the topics of productivity and time management. It's one of my sort of keen interests. But this is very different to anything I've read in that area before. And it really spoke to me as it's very easy in this current culture of, like I say, hustle and constantly doing more and having more and more inputs to read something that actually says, no, slow down, you'll feel better. So I definitely recommend this book for readers who are looking for a more balanced and sustainable approach to achieving goals in a more natural way. Third book is a hard left turn from that, and it's Bride by Ali Hazelwood. It's a spicy and adventurous paranormal romance. It is Ali Hazelwood's usual formula, all of her trademarks and classic tropes, enemies to lovers, all of that good stuff. It's very funny, and it has hints of the things you would probably loved about her feminist novels. If you like Ali Hazelwood works and you like vampires, or even if you don't, I think you'll love Bride. She does some really interesting things with the law, which is a bit different. Probably great for fans of Twilight as well. My fourth book is Something Fresh by P.G. Wodehouse. This is actually a different series of P.G. Wodehouse. Long-time listeners of the podcast will know I always highly recommend the Jeeves and Wooster books. This series was actually introduced to me by a friend of the podcast, Ashley V. Robinson, who was on episode 4. And I actually introduced her to the Jeeves and Wooster books, and I really enjoyed that she returned the favour by sending me the very thoughtful gift of a classic Penguin paperback of the second Blandings Castle book, Summer Lightning, which I read and then instantly went back to the first one to get a fuller picture because I wanted to read all of this series. It's got all of the classic Wodehouse wit. It's a comic caricature of English aristocratic life, but also contrasting with the American aristocracy of wealth and self-made men and business. It's got low-stakes hijinks like all of Wodehouse's books, and involves an accidental theft by the sort of forgetful and hapless Lord Emsworth of Blandings Castle. There is a love arc, which I got really invested in for what is such a low-stakes book. It is good, clean fun. It's comforting like a hot cup of tea or a cozy armchair by a rainy window, or even just pure sunshine. It's just fun and comforting, and Wodehouse is always someone I reach for when I just feel like I want a hug in a book, because it's just nothing to worry about, and you know it'll all come right in the end, and it's always very funny. I'm really loving the Blandings Castle books, and I definitely recommend this, the first of them, Something Fresh by P.G. Wodehouse. My final book is a bit of a tricky one to recommend, not because it's not brilliant, but because it's almost impossible to describe. It's 1066 and All That by W.C. Sellar and R.G. Yeatman. It is a humorous and satirical history textbook, which I know sounds ridiculous and there's so many oxymorons in there, but that's just what it is. It was published in 1930. It essentially recounts all the history of, I'm going to say, England and Great Britain from before the Middle Ages, the inception of civilization on these islands, and does so in a very funny way that kind of pokes fun at the way not only history is taught, but how it's taught in England, and what is taught in England and what is brushed over very quickly, including misspellings or getting the names of things wrong. There's barely any dates in it. Basically all true, but with a very specific tilt to it, which I just found so funny. It's the kind of subtle humour that lays groundwork very early on that doesn't seem funny until you revisit those same phrases or jokes later on, and it all builds upon what came before it in a very classic British comedy type way. It is something that anyone who's fans of Blackadder or Monty Python, sketches by Mitchell and Webb or QI, anyone who loves that kind of humour and that category of joke will probably love this book. And I think it's a book that probably was very popular when it came out, but as maybe fell out of the public eye. I just love it so much. It has become an instant favourite, and it makes me sad that I'm going to find it really hard to find its audience because it's so hard to sell. but so worth it if you do read it. It's incredibly short. It's about 100 or so pages long. And just great. I irritated my husband by how much I was laughing out loud reading this book. That is my fifth and final choice of my top 5, which is 1066 and All That by W.C. Sellar and R.J. Yeatman. I have 3 honourable mentions, the first of which is Dead Famous by Greg Jenner. Greg Jenner, for anyone who isn't familiar with the name, is all the reasons you love horrible histories. He is a public historian who's incredibly funny, but also makes history accessible and easy to understand for anyone who maybe thinks they don't like history. Because I think the way history is taught in schools often strips out the most interesting and fun parts and doesn't really make it as relevant to today. Jenner fixes that perfectly. Dead Famous is his history of celebrity, which is not a topic I ever would have thought I would have been interested in, but found myself absolutely fascinated with the fact that the way we think of celebrity and fame now was built up over centuries. It dates back as an idea to the 18th century, and so much of what the hallmarks of fame were back then and history and celebrity are still prevalent today in a very obvious way. Things like spreading rumours, publicity stunts, how you get your name out there or how you get discovered, how people who often become the biggest celebrities have such marred and tragic pasts and ends. It's a really interesting history book that I think is written in such a conversational and fun tone that I think literally anyone could enjoy it. And there's so many people from history that I'd never heard of in it that were fascinating, and I just wanted to learn so much more about them. It's a great book and one I definitely recommend. Dead Famous by Greg Jenner. The second of my honourable mentions is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. I don't really need to say much about this, least of all because I will give away the plot if I do. If you've never read an Agatha Christie and have wanted to try, Murder of Roger Ackroyd is a great one to start with. It really showcases what Agatha Christie can do. She was the queen of crime, still undisputed, still fantastic. She pioneered and began most of the tropes of modern murder mysteries that we still see today. She's just an icon. And yeah, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is fantastic. And my third and final honourable mention is The Chalice of the Gods by Riordan. It was a fantastic book. It's a great sequel to the Percy Jackson series. The only reason it didn't quite make my top 5 is I think I'm just not the market audience for this book anymore, and that is completely fine. I'm just not the market audience for this book anymore, and that's completely fine because it is for middle school age children. I think kids of that age will absolutely adore it. It revisits the classic formula of Percy Jackson, of the original trio doing adventures with a very set goal and a set end, usually a very short timetable as well. And yeah, fun, short, can't wait to read the rest of these books. I think I've got the second one on my shelf and the third one will probably be coming out this year. Thank you so much to everyone who has listened to the podcast in 2024 and anyone who continues or starts to do so in 2025. I won't lie, I have found maintaining and then restarting the podcast after this particular break has been a huge challenge because this year has been incredibly difficult. But I'm hoping to push on. I've got some exciting episodes already recorded and also some exciting ones lined up. And I can't wait to share them with you. I am going to set up a poll. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, if you have any ideas about people you would love to hear on the podcast so you can find out their top 5 books, I would love to hear it so that I could contact them. If you aren't listening on Spotify, you feel free to message me on Instagram at bookstolastpod and I will definitely pick those messages up. Thank you so much for listening. I wish you the very best of New Year's, and until next time, bye for now.